WGN Studio B, delivering directly to you the most cutting-edge information available. In fact, you, the listeners, have gone on to be some of our most popular radio hosts. You, the listener, offer feedback that molds our programming to appeal to our worldwide audience. In fact, you, the listener, provide us with eyes and ears on the ground to give us the inside scoop on stories the mainstream media fears to touch, reporting about newsworthy events in your area, and you, the listener, are the lifeblood of this station. And we thank you for being such a treasured member of our Revolution Radio family. And so this holiday season, from all of us to all of you, have a happy and safe holiday season, and let's make this new year a success once again together. Thank you.
Welcome, one and all, to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter, and I guess we'll call this the Christmas edition to the show. Tonight I have with me Arik Reiss, A-R-I-K-R-E-I-S-S, filmmaker, and the film that he's working on now is Druglawed 2. How you doing, Arik?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Well, you know, you're doing such important work in the area of restoring hemp and access to cannabis, which has so many uses. I mean, it would take us more than 2 hours to list them all. So many positive uses. I had to get you back on. I had to promote your new film. So, Arik, where would we go? Where would the audience go to help you make your second film, Druglawed 2?
If you go to www.druglawed.com, and that's spelled Druglawed, like outlawed, you can download the film for $4.20, and you can buy the DVD for $25 New Zealand, including postage to anywhere in the world. So that's about $15 US. And all proceeds are going towards the filming of the sequel in Uruguay, which will begin next week. And for those viewers who've already contributed, thank you very much for pledging to the Kickstarter campaign. We managed to raise over $6,000 to finance the Uruguayan segment.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That just came in, what, last week?
Yeah, a few days ago. The campaign closed on Sunday.
Yeah, that's really good. I don't know how you make documentaries so cheap, Arik. I mean, it's just I've seen it now twice, pretty much twice all the way through, and it's just, I mean, there's so many amazing facts in these movies, folks. I mean, you really got to get them. I mean, it's a beautiful sort of summary of most of the major political events tied to drug wars and whatnot. It's just the correlations are just off the scale. And I congratulate you for creating such a chronography of events, tying it in with the drug wars.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it took 6 years to put it all together. It was a labor of love, and I'm glad that there are a few people out there cheerleading for me, like you. Thank you so much. Because the mainstream media, and especially in New Zealand, is not really taking the cause to heart at all. I haven't received any reviews in any of the magazines or any of the television stations or major newspapers. It's just been bloggers and very small local newspapers who have been talking about the film. But wherever they do talk about the film, there's sellout audiences. You know, in a tiny little town of, you know, a few thousand people, we had a crowd of 150 people come out to see the premiere in Tasman a few months ago. Tasman is a quite isolated region in New Zealand, and so that just goes to show where there has been some traction. It's been really good.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you see the movie, it's just it's captivating. I mean, it's got great music. I mean, it's really. I mean, you're really quite the filmmaker. I mean, just that alone, that skill set is quite developed. I looked up. I put this in the quote today about it on Facebook. I looked up what it cost to make Inside Job, which was my other favorite documentary on the financial collapse of 2008, starring Matt Damon, and that was a $2 million film.
It was a really good film. I loved that film. But yeah, what I do is I do almost everything myself. I just happen to have all the right skills to really take a film from start to finish without too much input from other parties. And where I did require other people, they worked really cheap. They were extremely generous with their time. And Basically, a bunch of very talented stoners made this movie for a nominal amount of money, and I feel that it stands up against stuff that could go, that's on History Channel. We try to make it to that same standard, and I think we succeeded in the end. And thank you for noting the music, because that was actually the most expensive part of the production, was composing a completely original soundtrack for the film and recording multiple instruments from in multiple places, and it came together really nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I've never made a documentary, but I mean, I could never do one on my own. I don't have that your range of skill sets. So I know. I mean, people have to get this movie. I very much on my show, I promote activism. And if you don't want to be an activist, folks, you got to at least support the activists that are out there. There's nobody sitting on the fence anymore, folks. So this world is it's going in the wrong direction real fast. And last couple weeks ago, I had a person on talking about Fukushima. Arik, are you aware that 90% of the Pacific Ocean is dead?
I wasn't aware it was that bad. No.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much gone. And like talk about mainstream media. I mean, they're not listening to your message, and they're not listening to the dramatic message of what's happening there. So, it's a consistent theme. Everything that's coming out is it's all about gagging everyone, and that's why I'm here. That's why Revolution Radio is here. But let's just get back to your great documentary. We'll talk a bit about the first one too, because I did a previous interview with you, but I wanted to highlight, and if I was to say anything to change the film a little bit to improve on it, I know you're probably cool with feedback. Yes. I mean, it was awesome, but this woman at the beginning, I mean, she blew me away. Mother Mary Joseph Aubert.
What is your suggestion, to have more content about her?
Well, you know what I would have done? I would have brought her back at the end, and I would have said,
you haven't watched it to the end then, because
did you bring her back in at the end?
Yeah, after the credits have rolled, a little bit of the credits, there's an epilogue, and it picks up on her story. And in fact, in the sequel, there's going to be a whole segment about her, because she's currently being beatified as a saint, so that will make her the patron saint of cannabis. So I'm going to give the conclusion to that story. It's likely that she'll be canonized within 2 years, and which is exactly the time that I will be releasing the film. So there'll be another segment about her.
Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. So you did bring her back in. Okay. I didn't remember that, because just compare what she was doing with cannabis and what Nixon and all the other subsequent presidents did to the issue, and just created so much conflict, killed so many people, put in prison so many people, so many Americans. 22 million Americans in prison since the first drug legislation came in that went across the planet. In the U.S. alone, 22 million people.
Oh, no, it's more than that. That's just the people arrested for cannabis.
Yeah.
So currently in U.S. prisons, over half of your prisoners are serving time for drug offenses, non-violent drug offenses, I should say. So that means that more than 50% of your prison population is there because of the drug war, which is a frightening number if you think that 1 in every 100 Americans is actually behind bars right now. It's extraordinary how large your prison population actually has become. If you would like kind of a comparison, China has the world's largest population by far, and it has less than 1/4 of the prisoners that the U.S. has. So proportional to the population, the U.S. has got, I think, 5 times more prisoners than the second highest country on the list of countries with the highest incarceration rates.
Yeah, we did a comparison on the last show of all the key factors for health and well-being and problems, and the U.S. ranks at the top of every list. So yeah, no, that's not surprising to me. Maybe to the listener, but I'm a Canadian, by the way, Arik. But
I did not know that. But
yeah.
You're living in the U.S. now, is that correct?
Oh no, I just have a show in the U.S. But no, I live in Toronto. I spend half my time here, half my time in Quebec.
Oh, okay. I've been to Toronto. It's beautiful.
Have you been to Quebec?
Not. Yes, yeah. Montreal's in Quebec. Yes, I have been there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
Montreal.
for me. It's because of poor BC being whacked by Fukushima. It used to be my favorite province. Now, Quebec is now my favorite province. It's got the best environmental laws in the country, and it's a model actually for a lot of the world for the way they treat that province and nature. So I'm a big fan of Quebec right now, and I'm hoping it's going to get even better. So, but so let's get back to your great movie here. You said in the movie that Mother Mary Joseph Aubert, who was a Catholic missionary, she actually somehow learned how to speak Maori. Do you know how she
Not,
did that?
well, she was a polylinguist. She could speak English, French, Italian, Spanish, and I'm missing one. And Maori. That was the fifth one.
Yeah.
So when she arrived in New Zealand, and bear in mind that New Zealand was one of the very last places in the world to be colonized by Western powers. So it was in the mid 1800s that the first missionaries were uh, beginning to decode the Maori language and create an alphabet for it, which is based on the English alphabet, although there are certain differences in the way words are pronounced, or sorry, letters are pronounced. But anyway, she was one of, I guess, the first wave of missionaries, and she actually participated in creating the anglicized alphabet of Maori. She, in fact, released two very important books on Maori grammar. So, right in the beginning, she was not just learning Maori, but she was actually helping other people to learn Maori. That's how intelligent she was and how gifted she was with languages. So she was already fluent in Maori by the time she departed from Auckland, which at that time was mostly just jungle. I mean, now it's the largest city in New Zealand, but at that time it was mostly overgrown with bush. And then she went to an even more remote area called Wanganui and traveled up the Wanganui River on a Maori canoe. She had basically introduced herself to the local tribesmen who could potentially have just killed her. They weren't beholden to any laws or anything like that, and they could have seen the Europeans as invaders, which actually in many ways they were, and often these people were just killed by the Maori tribes. But she was incredibly brave, and she just approached them and asked for a canoe ride up the river to set up a mission 75 kilometers upriver, which is still in existence today, and I visited it. There are still three nuns who live there. They're the last three existing nuns from the order that she established, over 130 years ago that she established this order.
Is there like a museum in commemoration of her work there?
There's still the church that she built, which is in immaculate condition. It's really beautiful. There's still a small group of people who maintain it, and most of the artifacts from her life are in the Museum of City and Sea in Wellington, which is where she died. She left the wild areas of New Zealand to return to Wellington to set up a hospital there. And she paid for the construction of that hospital with the proceeds of the sales of the medicines that she was making in Wanganui. And the principal ingredient to those medicines was actually cannabis. So she's credited as being the person who introduced cannabis to New Zealand.
And was she not a medical doctor as well?
She was a nurse. She was trained in France, and she served as a nurse in the Crimean War. So at the time she was in New Zealand, she was probably the foremost medical practitioner in the country. She knew a lot more than most doctors would have known.
Yeah, and she also was an herbalist. Was that something she picked up while she was there? I think there was some interface between her and the Maori around their herbal traditions.
That's true. That's true, because the Maori had local knowledge of the medicinal plants in New Zealand, and she had brought seeds from Europe that had medicinal properties. And also bear in mind that there was no chemical pharmaceutical medicines at that time. Almost all medicines were botanical. So she would have had a very strong background in botanical medicine, and she married the local knowledge with her European knowledge and became very successful in doing so. She was somewhat bought out by a pharmaceutical company who wanted to capitalize on her exports of medicine because she was the principal exporter of medicine from New Zealand. And then they changed the recipes to make them cheaper to produce. And when she discovered that, she withdrew her support and destroyed all her recipes. So there's actually very little known today of the ingredients, but the bottles still exist, and some of them still clearly are marked with cannabis, indica, cannabis sativa, tincture of cannabis. Those kinds of things are written on the bottle. So we know for sure that she was using cannabis as part of those remedies.
Yeah, back then, about 50% of medicines, cannabis was the main ingredient.
That's true, yeah. And there was an interesting crossover with morphine and cannabis where the two were mixed together. And because opiates can cause addiction and serious health problems, the cannabis was blamed as well because it just happened to be an ingredient in some of those tinctures. And that was actually what created some of the hysteria in the early 1900s that propelled the first international treaties against cannabis. It was just lumped in with opium.
I see. So they sort of intentionally got confused. I don't think there was any confusion. The agenda was to get rid of something that they wanted to bring in the oil industry. I think that was one of the main factors. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Cannabis is a wonderful source of energy. It's carbon neutral. You can grow it 4 times faster than trees, for example, which are another fuel source if you think about wood. And you can create the best biofuel from it. In fact, the biofuel is so non-toxic that a human being can drink a glass full of it and not have any effects from it whatsoever. And if you think about the environmental devastation that is attendant to oil mining, whether it's on land or at sea or in tar sands, it's always a horrendous environmental catastrophe when there's an oil spill. But if there was a hemp biodiesel spill, it would be either neutral to the environment or it would actually promote the plant and animal life in the area by fertilizing the soil and providing a food source for fish. For example, if it was spilled at sea, fish would actually eat the the spill. So it's a much better source of energy for human beings and needs to be heavily promoted, because right now the problem is not with cultivation of hemp as an industrial material or resource. The problem is with actually the harvesting of it, because we don't have the machinery that we need to effectively harvest the hemp that we can so easily grow. The machinery is extremely expensive, and that's only because it's only used in a few places where hemp has been legal throughout the past 100 years. In most places in the world, the prohibition of cannabis extended towards hemp. So hemp was outlawed as well, even though it has no narcotic properties, which is not to say it doesn't have medicinal properties, because it actually does. Hemp is just as useful in medicine as cannabis. Maybe not quite as useful, but certainly it does have a lot of medicinal benefits. So, there was a targeting from not just the oil industry against hemp, but against hemp from the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industries in the 1930s and 40s were heavily opposed towards cannabis. They saw a huge opportunity, or rather specific elements within the pharmaceutical industry controlled by DuPont, the partner of the Secretary of the Treasury, Andrew Mellon. They were partners, and they saw an opportunity to eliminate cannabis as a medicine and replace all the things that it can help with or cure with their own chemically patented pharmaceutical products. So they were opposed to cannabis as well. The paper industry was opposed to cannabis. That was supported heavily by Randolph P. Hearst, I should say, and the cotton industry as well. So these industries ganged up against cannabis and hemp and effectively suppressed it from the late 1930s to the present day.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a battle because it was so common back then. This is something that I was talking to a friend of mine, Ralph Ely, today, and he said his dad used to buy hemp rope, and he was very disappointed. He remembers this when he was a kid, that when hemp rope was no longer available, he was very upset because it was the best rope, the strongest rope available.
Yep, salt resistant. It's the strongest, longest natural fiber on Earth, and it was basically replaced by nylon and things like that that were byproducts of the petroleum industry. So you know that consortium of industrialists did the greatest disservice, I think, to humanity when it outlawed cannabis and hemp, because today we would have a very tiny percentage of the current environmental and also economic problems that we have. Because with cannabis and hemp production, it can be localized. You can grow it practically anywhere, which means that if we had a potentially hemp-based economy, and that's not a far-fetched idea. If hemp was exploited to its full potential, you could replace almost all the things that we currently have that are made from oil-derived products, including fuel itself, could be substituted with naturally based products like hemp, particularly hemp. Hemp is the most useful of all of the plants. There are over 50,000 products that you can make out of it, including food. So you can eat it, you can fuel your car with it, you can build your car out of it, you can build planes out of it. In fact, in Canada, there's an engineering company that recently revealed it has built a hemp-bodied plane which runs on hemp biodiesel. So we would have all of these products. Our houses would be built from it. They'd be painted with hemp-based paints. They'd be carpeted with hemp. Your curtains would be made of hemp. Your furniture could potentially be made of hemp, and you could be burning. You could be cooking hemp seed-based food for dinner on a stove that could potentially be fueled by hemp biodiesel. So all of these things, all of the basic needs that human beings have, from clothing to paper to fuel to housing, they can all be satisfied by hemp, and that's what we really need to concentrate on. We need to revive the hemp industry.
Wow, what a beautiful picture you paint, Arik, of a much better world. I mean, oh man, if we could just take like a step back 100 years and rewrite everything with hemp. You're right. I mean, we wouldn't have nuke power. We wouldn't have the oil industry. We wouldn't have the drug industry. Now we've got, what, 20% of Americans and Canadians on psychotropic medication. I mean, you name it. I mean, it's such a powerful, healthy solution, and a natural solution. Natural is really key, because all the toxins we're kicking out from all these different processes that are so bad for the environment. I mean, all these things, like you say, a spill with hemp biodiesel is not at all toxic to the environment.
True. And in fact, hemp has been used as what they call a mop crop as well. So they've planted it around nuclear reactor sites where there's been meltdowns, like in Chernobyl. And I'm not sure if they've followed through on this, but one of the foremost scientists in Japan has advised that they do the same around Fukushima, to soak the radiation out of the soil. And it seems to be working very well. So where they expected there to be 50 years of kind of a wasteland around Chernobyl, they've found that the animals have returned, the plant life is resurging, and they were astounded that the hemp worked so well to deradiate that environment.
That is quite amazing. Yeah, I'm not. I have no idea. I mean, I have no doubt that hemp is very powerful and a good detoxifier. But no, the Fukushima is a long way to go before it's anywhere. I would advise anyone to live anywhere near it. It's still giving off a ton of toxins, 1,000 at least, maybe 2,000, based upon what my guest told me. So, but it's definitely there. It's going to be a solution in the event that they ever find a way to stop that monstrosity from hell. I mean, oh man, I don't want to get into that on this show, but it's a real problem. I was going to say, can we put hemp in the water? Will it grow in water? That's really what we need, a hemp that grows in water.
Well, it would be a very expensive kind of hemp. You could grow hemp hydroponically, but it's not gonna. I don't think it'll work in salt water. In fact, it definitely won't work in salt water. So that won't work. But Yeah, if you were to grow hemp hydroponically for other reasons, it would probably be just an experimental thing because hemp grows so fast in soil that there would be no real point to growing it hydroponically.
Mm-hmm. Now, is it native to North America hemp, or is it more like something that comes from Europe and Asia?
It's actually Asian. The the exact location of the first hemp plants were probably in the steppes of Russia, and it was then transported along the Chinese trade routes, the spice routes, because it was used as a food and it was used for clothing and paper and sails and ropes and all of those things. It was very useful. So it was one of the things that was spread very rapidly by the Chinese, and then the Chinese moved through the east coast of Africa and introduced it there. And then European traders were trading around the Middle East, and they brought their own, they transformed hemp into varieties that grow in colder climates. And now we have hemp that can grow in 6 continents. So hemp can grow in cold climates, dry climates, wet climates, hot climates, most soil types. It's really a very hardy and universal crop. It's actually the ideal companion plant for human beings. So much so that if hypothetically every other plant on Earth were to die due to disease or whatever the case may be, and we still had hemp, human beings could continue to live and continue to provide themselves with the same things that we currently have, just in a different form. The key thing to remember is that there are hydrocarbons in hemp, and sorry, carbohydrates in hemp. And what we get out of oil is actually hydrocarbons. It's really the same molecule. It's just a slightly different twist on the same thing: hydrocarbons versus carbohydrates. And so from these hemp-based carbohydrates, we can replicate almost all the things that we can make out of oil. For example, plastics. For example, polycarbonates, and just about anything you can think of. And not only that, but these things
What about tires? I hear that there's a lot of oil in tires for cars.
Yes, I'm not actually sure about that because a tire is a kind of a rubber amalgam, I guess, and I don't really know if you can make a tire, or at least not the same kind of tire with hemp, without adding a lot of other things. So I can't really comment on that. But you can make the body of the car. You can make the upholstery of the car out of hemp. You can even make lots of engine parts, biodegradable engine parts out of hemp. So it has infinitely more potential than any other plant that you can think of. Some plants you can, like for example, if I can compare it to corn, you can make biofuel out of corn, and you can make food out of corn. And you can probably make a few other things out of corn as well, but not that many. And after you've harvested the cob, which is all that you're going to use, you have all of this mass. Most of the mass of corn is not used at all, and causes its own problems in terms of disposal. And with the hemp plant, you can use just about all of it. It gets a little bit technical because it's quite hard to dual crop, which is the term they use for using the stem of the plant as well as the seeds and the flowers. It's called dual cropping, and it's a very difficult thing to get right, but potentially you can use the entire plant and the roots as well.
The roots?
Yeah,
really?
The roots.
What would be some of the uses for the roots of a hemp plant?
Medicine, production of medicine. There's a lot of components to the roots that have got health benefits. And I've heard people chew on the roots as a nutritional supplement. So yeah, it's not easy to use the roots because they're embedded in the soil, and extracting them is difficult. And they're not really bad for the soil, so it's probably more cost effective to just leave them in the soil. But potentially there is valuable products that you can produce from extracting the roots as well.
Are you aware of the how long we've been using hemp as a species? Like in terms of historically, how long has it been used?
At least 10,000 years, and they know this because about 10 or 12,000 years ago, human agricultural production began, and that was a turning point where it's essentially the starting point of civilizations. Because before that, human beings were nomadic, so there was a tribal system, but there wasn't a fully fledged civilization until the first agriculturalists began settling their tribes in a certain place, and that localization then allowed cities to build up and cultures to build up, and writing and other forms of modern civilization began around that time. And they've been able to date the artifacts of hemp agriculture to that time. So the theory is that it was one of the very first crops that people ever planted, and more than likely they were planting it for food, for the seeds, but it's also possible that they were planting it for the psychotropic effects that that cannabis has. So in a sense, then that activity spurred forward human civilization. So it really is fundamental to human life. And then they found traces of cannabis in graves that are dated to 30,000 years ago. They have little pouches with traces of cannabis buried with the shaman of ancient tribes. So it was obviously sacramental or medicinal a long time before that, but it probably wasn't specifically grown, specifically cultivated until about 10 or at most 12,000 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, I figured it had a long natural history, and we've known about it for a long time. And this is one of the constant themes of my show, is that we've gotten away from nature, and in the process, we just about destroyed the planet. So the only solution, the only way that works for us, is to live in according with nature's laws and nature's bounty. And hemp, getting back to hemp. I mean, I am so in line with what you're saying about reindustrializing and reusing hemp for all of its many purposes, because we desperately need things that do not produce toxins when we manufacture with them. And this is a huge problem now. The chemical industry, oh God, has it ever done huge damage to our soil, our water, our air? And it's all because we're not using natural products like hemp.
Sure, and hemp is not just a solution from that point of view, but it also is a solution from counteracting what the pollution that's already in the air. If you think about how hemp walls actually draw carbon out of the air and become stronger over time, it serves there's two benefits there. Obviously, it's reducing CO2 levels, and also it's becoming a better building material as time goes past, because it's returning to hempcrete is made of lime and hemp herds, and as vapor, which contains carbon, CO2, comes into contact with the hemp wall, the H2O is released, but the CO2 is retained by the wall, and in doing so, the lime in the hempcrete is returning to its former state of being limestone, and so it's actually becoming stronger and harder over time. So it's really an ideal building material for the needs that we have right now of reducing CO2 levels. There's no building material that does that except for hempcrete. So we really should be doing almost all our construction with it, because it actually locks carbon up into the building itself.
Yeah, be honest with you, it's the least of my worries, carbon, but it is a big worry for a lot of people. So hey, if it'll make them happy, I'm all for it for that reason too. I mean, I don't have to agree with people to want to get along with them. So hey, that's an awesome characteristic that I wasn't aware of. I was chatting with a guy just after our last show. He lives in LA. I was looking around trying to find some synergies here for you. And they fought 10 years, going through 3 different government hearings and whatnot, to build a hempcrete home in LA. You believe it? I mean, honest to God, talk about a bad environment for hemp construction in LA when you got to go through that much paperwork to build a house.
Oh yeah, I mean there's all this resistance to it, which is holding it back from reaching anywhere near its potential. Building codes are normally a pain, but when you present plans to the local council as you have to do in New Zealand or whatever, whoever controls that in the US or in Canada, and you say to them, I want to build a home out of hempcrete, you are almost certainly going to be refused your building permit. So it's really retarding the progress of the hemp industry, and we need to start converting to these kinds of sustainable building materials very quickly, because we can't keep strip mining mountains and ripping up forests and ocean floors to obtain the building materials that we are currently using.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, I agree. And he went into quite detail with me about the great advantages of using hempcrete in terms of its cooling and capacity is tremendous in a warm climate. It requires very little energy to keep a house cool in a hot climate when you use hempcrete.
Yeah, true that. And conversely, it's cheaper to keep it warm in a cold climate. It's a thermal regulator. So, on every metric, it's the ideal building material. It's fire resistant. You can't burn down a hemp house or a hemp building. It's
Can use it
earth.
for the roof too.
Yeah, you can. I think you need to use hemp laminate boards for things like roofing, but it'll be a component there.
Uh,
There'll be other things that they use as well, like sisal, for example, and wheat straw. They get combined, but as long as the substrates are all farmed, which was a thing that Henry Ford called chemagy, which was it's a lost science, which basically is the marriage of agriculture and industry. So it was a theory. I don't know who actually came up with the theory, but it was a theory that was popular in the 1920s and the 1930s and was endorsed by Henry Ford, which suggested that we should avoid using mining as the source of our industrial materials, and we should rather be using agriculture, because you can always regrow, a field of plants. You cannot reuse a mine once it's been stripped bare. So they understood sustainability way back then, and all of these ideas were suppressed and kicked off the playing field by the power players in the oil and the pharmaceutical and cotton industries and chemical industries. So the entire world as it is today would really be a lot better if we had just continued on along those principles of chemagy instead of what we currently use.
yeah, I mean it's not just better, but have a future. Right now, if we don't smarten up, we're not going to even have a future, Arik. I mean, it's that bad. I mean, I study all the eight planet killers, geoengineering, nuke power, the way we grow our food, GMO, chemicals in the soil and whatnot, all the many different factors. And man, I mean, we're extincting ourselves. It's absolutely ridiculous, along with everything else. It
Yeah,
makes
I
no
think
bloody sense, Arik. It's insane. It's absolutely insane when we have so many safe alternatives. And this is why I am pushing hemp like crazy these days.
what does the hemp industry look like in Canada?
Well, we do have a little bit of a positive report on that end. We have a new prime minister now,
Oh,
Justin Trudeau,
congratulations.
and he's quote legalizing the use of cannabis.
Yes, I've been following that, and I just want to say that Canada is my second favorite country in the world after Uruguay.
Oh, really? For that reason. And now you might know more about this than I do, but I'm not sure if he's going to promote hemp production too. But like you say, I'm not a user of cannabis, so that aspect of it didn't impress me that much. But I do. I'm not against people using it. Believe me, anything that the shamans use, people should be using. I'm all for natural medicines, natural relaxants, natural ceremony. I'm all for this stuff. I mean, I'm not against it, even if I don't use it. I want others to have the right to use this stuff. It's good for them. It's proven to be very medicinal in many ways. So I'm all for it, and I'm glad, God, people can finally do it without worrying about being thrown in jail. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, I'd just like to say congratulations to Canada for electing a man who seems to be ethical. You know, Stephen Harper was a disaster. Uh, you know, his propaganda, you know, towards the end of his reign was so patently uh, dishonest, where he was basically saying that cannabis is far more harmful than tobacco, you know, trotting out the old lies when there are over 7 million tobacco related deaths every year on Earth, and there's between 0 and 1 death from cannabis per year. And that 1 or 2 deaths that you occasionally hear reported are never really confirmed. There's always
How do
something
you
else.
die from cannabis?
Well,
Having too much fun at a party and falling off a balcony or something? I don't know how you die from cannabis.
yeah, well, that would actually be death through misadventure rather than death from cannabis. But you know, they always find a way. They say, "Oh, this woman in the UK, that was the last case that I read. She was reported to be the first known confirmed death from cannabis in the United Kingdom. Now think about that. If there was 1 death, there was only one in the entire country. But then there were subsequent reports about the coroner saying that he had not taken account of the other drugs that were in his system, including prescription drugs. So those things were more likely the culprit. You know, there's 250,000 deaths from prescription drugs every year, and you know, we're still looking for these confirmed deaths as a result of cannabis. So if you're going to blame something, blame the prescription drugs first, which we know can be lethal. And if there is, I'm going to concede the point and say, okay, there's 1 or 2 deaths from cannabis each year. Well, that's 1 or 2 as opposed to 7 million from tobacco. So you know, it's insignificant numbers. And here's Stephen Harper basically just lying to the Canadian people, saying that cannabis is far more harmful than tobacco. And then, of course, they use these strange strawman arguments by saying, well, if we were to legalize cannabis when already got all these problems from alcohol and tobacco, which are already legal, then we just have another problem drug that would be ruining our society even more. But the reality is that where they have legalized cannabis, the rates of use of other drugs, particularly tobacco and alcohol, is actually reduced. So your net problems are reduced. You have fewer drink driving incidents. You have fewer hospital admissions from overdoses of alcohol, which, by the way, you can die from. Every bottle of spirits is a lethal dose of alcohol. If you down that, you will die. And many people do. Many young people do. If these people were allowed a legal outlet to use cannabis and they were to use it instead of alcohol or instead of tobacco, they would be leading healthier lives, and they would be less of a cost to society and less of a burden to your healthcare systems. So all of these strawman arguments that Stephen Harper was throwing up, thankfully, they didn't fly with the Canadian people, and you saw through it, and you elected the guy who made it part of his platform to legalize cannabis, and hopefully he follows through on that.
Oh, yeah, I think he is. I'm a bit disappointed, though, that we're not going to be allowed to grow it ourselves, and we're going to have to buy it from the government, and they're going to make a ton of money on it, and who knows what they're going to do with that. But that's another issue. But you know, you are right. It is a move in the right direction. It would be nice if we were allowed to grow a certain amount in our homes or whatever outside our homes, and you know, let people just use this stuff. I mean, it's we know now in Canada that it's not a deadly drug. It's actually one of the best drugs on the planet. If you're going to do a drug, this is the one you want to do, right, Arik?
There are safer drugs. It's not completely harmless, but it's certainly safer than the ones that are most prevalent in society, which are ranked in order: tobacco, alcohol, and pharmaceuticals. Those are the 3 most prevalent groups of drugs, and also the 3 most deadly groups of drugs. In fact, if you were to take, and we mentioned this in the movie Druglawed, by the way, we go into detail to make these comparisons. If you were to take the all the deaths from all the illicit drugs combined, that number would, and I'm talking about globally, that number would be less than 2% of the number of deaths that you get annually from tobacco and alcohol combined. So we're talking 50 times the number of people die each year from those two legal drugs than all the illicit drugs. I'm talking about every single one, heroin, crack, you name it, methamphetamine, it doesn't matter. You combine them all, research chemicals, all of these kinds of strange, they called the bastard children of prohibition by, I can't remember the name of the, Fiona Patton, the MP in Australia, called them the bastard children of prohibition because all of these research chemicals and new drugs that are being developed are basically done to satisfy the demand that people all over the world have to either relax or to have an altered state of consciousness, or maybe for whatever reasons, spiritual reasons, attempting to change their internal conditions. If we had access to the ones that are basically natural, for example, like mushrooms and cannabis, you'd have far fewer fatalities. You'd have a more enlightened society. You'd have people not being dependent on massive corporations who are profiting greatly from often from their misery when they're giving their hard-earned dollars over to these alcohol companies and cigarette companies. They could be producing a lot of these substances themselves in their backyards or in their in little jars. There's all manner of ways that you can produce psychotropic drugs on your own and not have to pay for them. So you're not supporting some mega drug baron in the form of an alcohol company or a cigarette company with your hard-earned dollars, and everybody will be better off for it.
Well, not to mention all the criminal syndicates making money on this stuff, the military. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's like so many things are, what is best for us is what's banned.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
absolutely ridiculous.
The drug war is nothing more than an enormous profit scheme. Basically, the people who benefit from the drug war most are the drug lords and drug kingpins all over the world, are the cartels and criminal syndicates, are the prohibitionist camps who have military-grade weapons, and that's funded by the public because it's your tax dollars that are going towards weaponizing your local police and sheriff's departments so that they can kick in your door and throw flash grenades at babies and blow holes in their faces, which often happens, and then arrest the parents, shoot the dog. And the people supplying the arms manufacturers are loving the drug war because they get the multi-billion-dollar contracts to roll out armored vehicles for all of these SWAT raids for nonviolent so-called drug offenders. And the newest kind of, the two newest bastard children of prohibition are the prison industrial complex, because they're making billions of profits from incarcerating that 50% of US citizens who are there for nonviolent drug offenses, and the drug testing industry that's also, making obscene profits from this strange obsession that seems to be globalizing now, of governments and corporations to drug test their citizens and their employees. And there was recently a move to drug test the New Zealand police, which they haven't done before. And the police were incensed about this, and they said, "How can you do this? How can you drug test us?" And but yeah, now you're worried because 10% of you uses cannabis, more than likely, possibly slightly more, and maybe the same rates of drug use exist in the police forces and in wider society, which means a large percentage, 10 to 15% of you, are going to be found out, and you don't like that.
I think it's higher than average. I think it's higher than average in the police or the military, definitely in the military, because it's a very stressful job. And they have a lot of pain to deal with. They see a lot of, gruesome things. Yeah, no, drug use would be much higher, Arik, in the police and the military.
I feel so. I would agree with you but I'd also want to see the results. I'm very interested to see
Oh,
New
me
Zealand's
too.
a small sample, but when those results come out about how many police officers and people who are associated with the police, not necessarily the officers, but the secretaries at the police force, and the dispatchers and so forth, how many of them are actually using drugs will be very telling. And I feel that you may also be right about higher rates of use because they have access, unprecedented access to all of these substances because they're being confiscated from other people,
Yeah.
and they're being transported in the police cars from the wherever these people were arrested, wherever these drugs were seized, and you could just pocket a few $1,000s of methamphetamine and nobody would know. So the temptation towards corruption that the drug war offers is also one of the negatives that you cannot really cost very accurately. And then we've had numerous reports in New Zealand, and I'm pretty damn sure this happens all over the world, and it happened in New York a few decades ago, where the police were incriminated for selling cocaine and things like that. But in New Zealand, there was at least 2 police prosecutors in the last 3 or 4 years who were arrested not just for selling contraband drugs, but for doing so between court sessions at the High Court in Auckland. So they would go in, they would prosecute somebody on drug charges, and between sessions, they would be selling methamphetamine to other people, and then they'd go back into court and continue the prosecution. And so when it was discovered that this was happening, there was a little bit of a hoo-ha about it, and 2 weeks later, the New Zealand media had forgotten this had ever happened, and they went back to their normal pattern of denigrating drug use, specifically cannabis use.
Wow. Okay, fascinating stuff, Arik. We'll be returning with Druglawed 2, Arik Reiss, great filmmaker from New Zealand. I didn't mention that. Be back soon, folks, with more of I'm Nature.
No, me. Hello?
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 Hello, I'm here.
Oi. Ouvi, tenho uma entrevista. Hello?
Welcome, one and all, to I Am Nature. We're back for the second hour, and I believe we have an extra guest here, James McCanney. Are you there, James?
Oh, yeah. Here's what's happened. I'm on a different device. So that's what's confused me.
Okay. Are you on a cell phone versus a computer?
Wait, let me try and pick you up on this other one here.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to hang you up and bring you back in then if you want to go to a different device.
Yeah,
you can't call me. I have to call you to bring into studio, okay? Let me just drop you. How much time do you need to hook up the other device?
Oh, 1 second.
Okay. All right. I'm just hanging it up. I'm going to call you back. Sorry for the little trouble here, folks, but James wanted to join the conversation. James McCanney is a top scientist in the world. Arik knows him, and I'm sure he'll be a great addition to the discussion here. I'm just going to try to bring him back in the studio. Arik, are you still with us?
I'm still with you.
All right. All right. Now, I just wanted, this is the time in my show when I usually discuss the importance of supporting Revolution Radio, my show, I Am Nature. This is an incredibly important platform on the internet, online radio. It's one of the more popular, if not the most popular, listener-supported station on not just in the U.S., but on the planet. We often have 1 million listeners for shows. My show's not quite as popular, but it may be one day. But I really think that my feeling is if you're listening to this show or you're listening to anything on Revolution Radio, you can kick out $5 a month, folks. Get the archives, develop a huge bank of knowledge from all the other hosts. I mean, you can put it on your phone. You can listen to it at any time at your own convenience. So I think it's a great investment for you, and it's going to help to support the station. All right. And also, in terms of Arik's great endeavor, his new movie. Arik, can you go through that again in terms of how people can support you with your new movie, Druglawed 2?
Sure. Well, we're financing the film partly through Kickstarter and partly through sales of Druglawed 1. And you can purchase Druglawed 1 at www.druglawed.com. And it's $4.20 to download. Or actually, we're doing a holiday season special for folks, and it's $2 for the next 2 weeks. So if you want to use the coupon that's on our Facebook page, just go to Facebook/Druglawed, and right at the top of the page, you'll see there's a link that you can click, and that will allow you to download the film for just $2. It's a 99-minute film, so it's pretty good value for money.
Oh God, are you kidding? That film's $20.
That's
minimum.
An understatement. That's the understatement. Yes.
Honest to God, Arik, it's an amazing piece of work. You're giving it, folks, $2. I mean, it's unbelievable. No, well, it's as good as anything on the market, Arik.
Thank you. We wanted to make it affordable to anyone in any country, you know. So if somebody is in Somalia and they only have a few lira or whatever the currency there is, and you know they want to buy the film, if they can't afford it for $2, you can always send me an email at info@druglawed.com, and I will send you a link to see it for free. It's really important to me and the other people who produce this film that anybody who wants to see it can see it. And it's the money that we're making, it's pretty insignificant anyway, so it's not going to kill us to send out a few free copies to any of your listeners who cannot afford the current price of $2. But if you want to go the whole hog, you can buy the DVD, and we'll send that out anywhere in the world. It is PAL format though, so it may not work in your country, so that's why you're safer off just buying the download.
Yeah, the download will work on any computer system, I believe.
That's right. And you can watch it on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer. You can then transfer it to your television if you want, if you have a big screen TV. I encourage people to really crank the sound because we put a lot into the music. Sound quality is excellent. So if you do watch the film, use headphones or a good set of speakers. Don't watch it on your computer laptop speakers because you'll not get the full effect.
It's a lot better than the new Star Wars movie. That's all I can say. That was a huge disappointment for me.
Oh, really? I was going to see that today. I'm glad we had this.
Oh man, don't waste your money.
Really?
Get a cheap coffee off the internet. That's what I did. I mean, come on, folks. I mean, I can't believe anyone's going to this movie. It's like the first movie, except instead of Luke Skywalker, they got this cute girl, subbing in for him. I mean, it's a joke. Oh, I was so disappointed. Anyways. But hey, I should introduce James to the crowd. James McCanney is with us. Are you still there, James?
Good evening.
All right. James, top tier 1 scientist, one of the top scientists in the world, a good friend of mine. and he wanted to join us in on the discussion, I believe, of hemp and its industrial compatibility, or its incredible diversity of use.
Yes.
Or variety of uses. God, I mean, my English isn't so great tonight. So yeah. Did you hear the first part of our show, James?
No, I just actually arrived. I was out doing Christmas shopping, and actually just arrived. So.
Okay, because I saw you kicking in and out. Maybe you're on your cell phone, running
Oh,
around.
no. What I believe what that was, one of the devices was on here when I was
Oh,
gone,
okay.
and so it was probably trying to answer, and then, but I'm here now.
Okay, great. Yeah, because we actually went through a lot of the amazing the uses for hemp, from hemp biodiesel to medicines to building materials. I mean, it's just, I mean, it obviously was put here to help mankind in our
Yeah,
species. I mean, it's just,
it was
there
grown.
ain't no coincidences when it's this versatile for our use.
It was grown in World War II. Again, it was kind of surreptitiously legalized because they needed so many hemp-related products for World War II. Because in place of steel and and plastics weren't that well developed at that point. But then when World War II ended, they went back to the Druglawed, status of cannabis or hemp, I should say. And but I just wanted to mention, I talked with Arik offline earlier this week, and I mentioned that I want to use hemp fiber in a product that I'm going to be developing here shortly in the coming year. And so I'm not going to talk about the product online, other than it's used to make fiber panels. And so very, very lightweight, very strong, very you can make it into any shape. And so it's extremely versatile building material. And so anyway, that's going back to, in fact, Henry Ford, by the way, many people may not know this, Henry Ford used it to make the body of the Model A automobile. It was made from hemp.
Yeah, a special composite of hemp and a plastic, right?
Correct. Yeah, it was like a resin, and so anyway, it was also a type of method, although they didn't use hemp, they were using cotton in World War II. Now we think of, say, the B-17 bombers as heavy bombers, made of steel and metal, aluminum, etc. But when they repaired them in World War II, they used a very similar composite with cotton. And so a lot of people may not know that. But basic fiber material along with resin makes a very lightweight but very strong material. So getting back to hemp for industrial construction of for utility like that, absolutely something that I'm going to do my part to get it back into common usage.
Yeah, last week, Roger Landry from the Liberty Beacon Project said that they're actually going to start a hemp farm in Colorado. Do you know anything about that?
No, I do not.
Okay, I thought you might know.
But there's a lot of things going on there that I might not know exactly, all the details.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, you're focused on what you're doing with them, which is great. Your wing wheel and whatnot. So good stuff. But Arik, what do you have to say about Henry Ford and hemp? Didn't he just love hemp?
Oh yeah, he was a very big fan of hemp, and in fact, the car which James has just described, which was there was just there were prototypes made of it, but they never got round to rolling it out in the assembly line because cannabis and hemp were made illegal around the very same time that the first prototypes were rolled out. And there's video of Henry Ford hitting the body of one of these cars with an axe, with the blunt side of an axe, and the axe bounces off the body of the car because the composite material that they were building these cars out of is actually 10 times stronger than steel, and it weighs 6 times less than steel. So it's an ideal material to build a car with because you're going to have much better fuel efficiency. And if you're ever in a crash, you're going to be a lot safer because the car will have a lot less momentum energy to destroy whatever you hit, and you're safer inside the body of a hemp car than you are inside a steel car. It's less likely to crumple. It's less likely to shear. You're more likely to survive a crash. And if there's a spill of the fuel, it's also less flammable than petroleum-based fuel. So your car is less likely to burst into flames. If only all our cars were built this way. After the life cycle of the car, you can then actually turn the car into compost. So Henry Ford you can compost the car.
Compost. Okay.
Yeah, you can turn the car into compost and then just fertilize the soil for the next generation of hemp plants. Not the entire car, but certainly a lot of it. That was part of Henry Ford's vision, was that there wouldn't be any waste. That after a car had become obsolete, the building components could then be reused by turning it into compost. So he was an absolute genius. He had foreseen all the problems that we were going to encounter 50 to 90 years down the line, and he'd solved them before they even became problems. And now we have the problems, but the solution is illegal.
I would think too it would be a hell of a lot cheaper to make body parts out of hemp and some plastic than having to mine this stuff, all the energy used in that, shipping it and all this. I mean, God, it would have been a much more efficient way of building things too.
Yeah, and then you don't have the heat requirement. Remember that when the steel, you have to tremendous amount of electricity in the form of blast furnaces. And then when you form it, you have to heat it again and stamp it on this tremendously expensive press, whereas hemp is just you build the form and you just lay the material on it, and a number of hours later it's dry and ready to go. But I just wanted to mention too that around that same time, a guy named J.P. Morgan, who we can thank for all of the energy debacle, I call it the 1900s, I call it the dark century or the black century. But just a side note there, he took over the mining ranges in northern Minnesota, which were the big iron ore deposits that had been discovered in northern Minnesota. The Masabi brothers had discovered that, and they were developing it, and they needed some money to build a railroad from the Masabi mines, which were in north central Minnesota, over to Lake Superior, where they could get it out and get it down to Detroit and Cleveland, where then they could develop it into steel. J.P. Morgan gave them some seed money to get the thing going. They got all the operation going, and then he cut them off, and he took it over basically for pennies on the dollar, and that became what is later became known as reserve mining. And J.P. Morgan loved the word reserve. That's where the Federal Reserve came from, reserve mining. And there were a number of other major entities that had the term reserve on it. That's our buddy J.P. Morgan, who we can thank for a lot of the disaster that we are now living with.
Oh, I mean, he really did a number on Tesla's inventions, I'll tell you. Yeah.
Yeah, he was essentially in the demise of Tesla also, and all the technology that should have, and also the demise of electric cars. He was the one who promoted petroleum as the fuel for automobiles. He was instrumental in destroying the electric trolley systems all over the country, forcing people into individual automobiles as a way of transportation. So anyway, yeah, J.P. Morgan, there's a special place down below for that guy. I bet there's a special room, for people like that. Excuse me, but little bit of a diversion there, so people understand the history.
Oh no, that man did nothing but bad things for this planet. And we're in an extremely tight situation now, environmentally. So he definitely did more than almost anyone I can think of in history to send us in the wrong direction. I think he's one of the main culprits.
Pure greed. Yep.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Do you agree with that, Arik?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And is it not true that his company's bought up, as James was saying? I just would like to get confirmation. They actually bought up the trams and then just ripped them up. They actually did that. It was just basically direct sabotage of their competitors.
And it was to force the hand of Detroit, and of course he was the one that supplied the steel for Detroit because of reserve mining. He was the owner of reserve mining. And let's just add another little bit here. A couple of years after he acquired reserve mining, surreptitiously and underhandedly, World War I broke out, gave him a good market for all that steel.
Mm-hmm.
That was 4 years after the Federal Reserve Bank was started, also at the hand of J.P. Morgan. Nice guy.
Oh, yeah. Real nice guy. So, Arik, your new movie, Druglawed 2, can you talk a bit about that? Can you give some sort of a rundown of what's going to be in the movie?
Sure. We've already filmed 3 segments. Each segment is in a different country and features a different star from that country. So I was in Israel filming Professor Raphael Meshulam, who will star in that segment, and he is the discoverer of the THC molecule and the endocannabinoid system, which makes him the world's foremost organic chemist in cannabis science research. He's in his 80s now, and he still has a laboratory at the University of Jerusalem. Fascinating man. He's been nominated for a Nobel Prize. He's won dozens of other very prestigious scientific accolades. And he's going to form the backbone of that story, and we'll look at all of the advances they've made in medical cannabis research in Israel. They're treating all kinds of diseases there with it, and it's not readily available, but they do have 22,000 registered cannabis patients, medical cannabis patients, and that number is growing. So they are using it quite a lot more than just about any other country. In fact, in terms of a state-sponsored medical cannabis regime, Israel has the world's largest, even though it's such a small country. And then I was in Australia, came back about 2 weeks ago, and I was filming Fiona Patten, who's an MP there. She'll be the backbone of the Australian segment, and she's made great strides towards legalizing medical cannabis there. I also talked to members of LEAP there. LEAP is Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. It's a group of, I think there's about 35,000 members from all over the world, people who were involved in law enforcement in one way or another. Most of them are former policemen who have formed this group to basically take a stand against not just cannabis prohibition, but drug prohibition as a whole, which they see as basically an arm of social control from the government, and something that's very negative with a lot of counterproductive results. They recognize that a lot of crime is caused by the prohibition of drugs. These drug cartels that are destabilizing Mexico and other countries all over the world, they're making their obscene profits because drugs are illegal. If drugs were not illegal, the people who would be selling them would be regulated, and they'd be taxed, and the taxes could then go in towards drug treatment. So the whole war on drugs is what they're opposing, and we got some great interviews with LEAP members in Australia. And I'm about to go to Uruguay to film the final segment, which will feature the former president, Jose Mujica, who's the first national leader to legalize cannabis. And the first sales of cannabis will occur in March or April 2016. So I want to be there to film that.
Wow.
I'd like to interject something here. In the United States, and really in Europe, the CIA is the largest drug trafficker in the world. People have to understand this, that they have been for a long time. It became a bit public back in the Iran-Contra days under the Reagan administration, where, oddly enough, his wife, Nancy, was just saying no to drugs. The Vice President, George Bush, and his CIA buddies were the biggest drug traffickers in the country and in the world. And now one of the big reasons for going into Afghanistan was to protect the poppy fields so that the heroin traffic could continue into Europe. In all of this is related to marijuana, which is, of course, the idea is that hemp is not marijuana, and marijuana is not hemp. I suspect that has come out in your work, Arik. But
yes.
but
if I can just flesh out some details for your listeners, with the Iran-Contra scandal, the CIA had basically shipped in arms to the Contras, who were there to destabilize a democratically elected government, and in return, the Contras were loading these cargo planes with cocaine, which was then being flown into Los Angeles and converted into crack by a drug kingpin named Freeway Ricky Ross. And that's where the crack epidemic of the 80s came from. It's a product of George H.W. Bush.
Exactly.
He was the one who was waving a bag of crack on television saying, "This is destroying America." And he's the number one kingpin supplying America with the same self-drug. So the self-same drug. So, the corruption is obscene. And when Oliver North pled guilty in a grand jury to the charges against him that he was trafficking drugs for arms, he pled guilty. And there was no penalties. In fact, he later on got a show on the Fox network. So that's your penalty for being a major drug kingpin. If you work for the U.S. government, you get a television show and get to spread your messages through the broadcast networks. It's a situation of complete insanity. A science fiction writer couldn't envision a more dystopian future than the kind of system that we currently have.
Right, and keeping marijuana illegal is part of the ruse, because if they started with one, they would then be in danger of losing control of all of them, because you would see the beneficial effects of creating a legal environment for what are now illegal drugs, because the prices would go down, the street crime would go down. Right now in the United States, the major cities, some of the lowest crime rates are relative to house break-ins, and this is the primary source of money for people on crack cocaine and heroin, etc., is house break-ins. 10% of the houses in the lowest crime area regions of the United States, 10% of the houses are broken into every year. Some cities as much as 25%. In other words, you have a 1 in 4% or 1 in 4 chance of having your house broken into every year in the United States in some of the higher crime areas, because of the drug addicts who, and of course the court systems can't manage this because there's so many of them. So they get them in the court system and they literally turn them out, and the next day they're breaking into houses again, because these people they're dysfunctional, they can't work, they don't know anything. The only thing they know how to do is steal and buy drugs at very high prices. So it's an absolute national disaster.
Well, it also feeds, we talked about that earlier, James, it also feeds the prison system, which has now been privatized. So It's really just a business.
It's a big business, and the judges are in on it, the court system. and nobody will say peep because their paycheck depends on it, and the judge is he's got a bottle under the desk, and he's just trying to get to retirement before anybody figures out what is going on.
Yeah, yeah, it's just one
It's
problem
sick.
leading to another and then another. It's quite a cycle of it's basically just violence, lies, just trickery. It's just a whole range of issues that are really debilitating. I think the U.S. more than any place on earth. What's it like in New Zealand now, Ark? Are things getting better there?
I'm sad to say not really. There occasionally clemency is granted by an enlightened judge in a cannabis conviction, but there's still highly punitive sentences being handed down to innocent people. People who are, in some cases, pillars of their community are now serving multiple year jail sentences just for possession of cannabis. The most recent case is a woman named Kelly Van Galen, who lived in a Northland town, and she was a member of the city council, a highly respected member of the community. She had received a medal of honor from the community at one point in her career. And there was a home invasion. Some people, possibly people addicted to methamphetamine, that would be an obvious reason why they did this. They crashed through the door, assaulted her husband, demanded money. They left. Her husband called the police. When the police arrived, they arrested Kelly because there was a container full of cannabis which she had grown and was storing for personal use. And so instead of going out and arresting the actual perpetrators of the crime, they arrest the victim, and she's now serving 2 years in jail. So it's really obscene.
Yeah, I mean
Wow.
the police are just making so much money off this too. All the extra hours they're getting, all this undercover work to imprison people or catch them for doing absolutely nothing wrong. Um, I mean, I can see how they just love this kind of stuff. I mean, they just love to get out there and make their overtime, and this is they're just part of the problem. I can see why
Yeah, the
they're
top,
all for all these ridiculous laws. The more laws, the more time they get to be on the beat. The
and
more
it's not a
restrictions it's put
dangerous
on us.
for them. Busting heads of innocent people on the street who are not armed and dangerous is an easy job.
Yeah,
So they get to rack up points. It's really not dangerous. A lot of the cop shows in the United States are centered around arresting people on the street for, marijuana or whatever, minor crimes. But 1 out of every 100 people right now in the United States is in jail. And 99% of them are due to the marijuana laws, etc. And of course, it's a high percentage of black people. So it's it's just big business for the prisons because they get money. As soon as these people get out on the street, within a month or two, they're back again. And it destroys these people's lives. They cannot get jobs. They cannot, they can't then build a productive life because of their criminal record.
yeah, they're sort of in a spiral going nowhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
Arik, we talked about that in the first part of the interview, and I think he said, didn't you say that half of the people in prison are related to cannabis or drug use?
Drug use in January, just over 50%. I think it's 51 or 52%. That's in 2013, by the way, so that it changes year to year. But in 2013, it was slightly more than half were in prison for non-violent drug offenses. In other words, they hadn't committed some other crime which would disqualify them from that sample. So it's a massive problem. It's a huge portion of the prison population, and almost all of those people shouldn't be there, because if you define a crime as a situation in which there's a victim and somebody is harmed, you can't find the victim in a situation where somebody is smoking a joint, because he isn't hurting or she isn't hurting anybody. You could argue that they're hurting themselves, but then they're allowed to hurt themselves much more with alcohol. So it's just a moral law. It's not a law based on any kind of uh, social harm or it's kind of like a law, like there was a law against homosexuality, which said that it's offensive to the people making the laws that you are a homosexual, and therefore you can be jailed. And up until 1986 in New Zealand, you could actually be jailed. But then they saw the light of day, and they removed that law from the books in New Zealand. But the laws against cannabis and against drugs in general, they still remain, even though they have no more moral authority than those laws against homosexuality or apartheid laws for that matter. For some reason, the drug laws are very persistent, and it's just incredible how resistant they are to being changed or amended in any way. It's like
you have to go back to the main source, is because look who's making the money, and it's the people in government, literally, who are making the money. If we look at something like human trafficking, it's the same thing. It's the people who are high up in government who are involved in this. So you're trying to go to. It's like when the police beat you up, who do you call? So we're dealing with an issue of extreme corruption in high places in Washington and other countries. And of course, Washington, as your movie points out, forces this onto, through the United Nations, et cetera, onto other countries.
Yeah, it's a worldwide problem. But hey, guys, I just want to interject something here. I'm extending my show. I believe tonight it's going to work. I've said this for 3 weeks in a row, and 3 weeks in a row it hasn't worked. But I do believe I have reassurances from the top dog at the station that it's set to go tonight. So anybody who wants to come on after the top of the hour at midnight Eastern, 9 Pacific, and further discussion on these topics or any other one, you're more than welcome to call into. It's called I Am Nature Extended. Just send me, you're not a friend of mine, send me a request through Skype. My address is bporter5611, BPORTER 5611, and we'll hook up and we'll have a great discussion, hopefully live over the air for the next 2 hours. Okay, so let's get back to the flow here. Yeah, so did you get into all the different facets of your next film, Arik?
I didn't get into the New Zealand segment.
You said Uruguay was because they were going to legalize.
Yes, so that's the finale of the film. So it begins in Israel. You're
not going to come to Canada to talk to Mr. Trudeau?
I would love to, but I might have to make a third film to do that. Because I think with the current running time I'll run to about an hour, 20 minutes, and that's about as long as I think it should be, because a lot of people complained that the first one was too long because it was 99 minutes. So this time I want to keep it a little bit tighter, but then I might make a third one because the Canadian experience now is going to be, I think, even more important than the Uruguayan experiment. Uruguay is a small country. There's only 3 million people. Not many people know about it, but everybody has heard of Canada. It's a G8 country, very powerful. It's, I think, the second largest country in the world geographically, after Russia. So if Canada legalizes cannabis, which it's very likely going to do next year, everybody's going to take notice of that.
Yeah, we just on occasion we do something right. Although I guess maybe I'm just too fussy about doing things right. But I don't believe that the government should make any money off of cannabis. I think they should allow people to grow it. It's a beautiful plant. We should be trying to create hundreds of thousands of square miles of this stuff. We should become the guide to the planet on how to renaturalize using hemp in all processes, whether it's medicined or whether it's hempcrete houses. What are we wasting our time for, folks? We're running, this earth is in a full tilt towards nowhere. We got to accelerate these processes, guys. I mean, legalizing cannabis is just a very small part of a big problem we have to solve.
Well, the problem is they still haven't divided the cannabis and the hemp and the marijuana, which gets people high, from the hemp that's grown for a lot of the other products. Arik, could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, there are efforts to allow industrial hemp production where the THC levels in New Zealand it has to be lower than 0.35%. So there's no narcotic value to those crops at all. But what that's done is it's imposed an unfair barrier to the farmer, because he now has to make sure that his THC levels are lower than that 0.35%, or otherwise he's at risk of being fined and having his crops destroyed. Plus, he has to incur the additional cost of having his crops tested. So they're trying to create an artificial barrier, in a way, between cannabis and hemp. We're all talking about the same essential family of plants. It's the cannabis sativa family of plants. So you have multiple different kinds of cannabis sativa plants, and some are good for smoking to get high, and some are good for making fibers. Some are good for seeds for eating and for oil. And because it was very convenient for the prohibitionists who were targeting the industrial side of that agricultural crop to say that it's all a drug and it'll all get you high and it's all dangerous. And that's where Harry Anslinger, the nephew-in-law of Andrew Mellon, who we were talking about earlier, the industrialist, that's where he came in to basically confuse everybody into thinking that it's all marijuana, it's all bad, and it must all be banned for the public safety. And in so doing, hemp was swept up in that hysteria, and hemp was banned as well, which was completely intentional. But the hemp is the thing that's more valuable in a way than the cannabis that you smoke to get high, because you can live. Human society could essentially subsist on just this one plant. We'd have all of these great things: paper, textiles, food, oil, fuel, medicines. So it's the perfect plant, and that's why they ganged up against it. And so the industrial side of cannabis is what we really need to be focused on and promoting.
Very
that's
good.
my
I
interest.
I like that answer. That's a very, very good answer, and that's one reason why I want to use hemp in a product that I'll be developing this coming year, and for many more in the future. But and that'll support that. And whenever you have an industry that's using it, other people will see that, and then it'll become more common, and the whole industry will grow, and all the other benefits that go along with it. But yeah, for clothes, for paper, for textiles, for cardboard, for automobiles, for parts of automobiles, whatever. Parts of other utilitarian items. It could be picture frames. I mean, it could be many other things that we could make out of this.
Well, homes, James. Homes. I mean, God,
Homes,
we all need
yeah.
homes. And incredible homes, the way they breathe, the way they retain heat, the way they cool, the way, it's just incredible. This stuff is at the top of the order in all areas.
Yeah,
in clothing, it's very healthy. It breathes very well. I've heard it's extremely good. It's better than cotton.
We have to stop using trees.
Mm-hmm.
We have to stop using trees. Let me say that 10 times. Trees, we have to replant the forests. The northern forests are dying. They're in terrible, terrible condition. And it's an essential part of the ecosystem. Growing hemp. And plus, you can grow hemp in places where nothing else grows. It's not like it's going to compete with corn or soybeans or food. And that was one of the big problems when they started doing biofuel out of corn, for example. The people in India starved because it drove the price of rice up, because you were taking a food product and converting it into petrol replacement. But hemp is not that way. It can be grown in places where you're not it's not competing with food production.
And also because if you wanted to use it for food production, you could, and therefore supply markets that needed it with the seed, or alternatively make it into a fuel. Because it's got so many uses, you can place the products that you create from it much easier. Whereas, corn, it's either going to be animal feed or human feed or fuel. It's just got one or two specific uses. Sometimes it's used in packaging and things like that. But it means that if there isn't that demand for that particular product, well, then your corn is going to undersell and you're going to lose money. But there's a demand for, there's so many things that you can make out of a hemp field that you can then fulfill the demand where it's needed. You're not locked into one particular outlet.
Yeah, James, because of your a background in engineering, I just want to get this question in because we're running out of time here, and I'm sure you want to say something about that. But I want to get this question out to you. Arik says that because it's such a very strong husk of the plant, it's almost probably like a bamboo when it's ready to be harvested. He said it's difficult to cut this stuff. Do you have any suggestions? Do you have any ideas about a machine that would be good at harvesting hemp?
Well, the standard method, I just came back from Peru, and all agriculture in Peru is done by hand. And so and in fact, it's a very good example because the corn stalks are extremely hard when they cut them, and these are cut by hand. And you see the people in the field cutting them by hand with machetes, basically.
Yeah, machetes. So you could use a machete to harvest hemp.
Yeah, and you cut it at an angle. And so, in fact, I've just recently had some experience with big bamboo, 100-foot tall bamboo in construction. And if you harvest it while it's still slightly green, then I want to encourage people too to get back to the idea of instead of mechanized farming, to get back to the idea that human labor in farms, and this means you and me, not just the people we import from Mexico or Honduras, but that human labor has value. And so, in other words, instead of having 600-acre farms or 2,000-acre farms with mechanized, industrial commercial farming, get back to smaller farming efforts where the people grow their food locally, organically, and the food literally that's on your table comes from within a mile of your house. And so the same thing. And if you see the level of agriculture if you go to Peru, there's no GMO, there's no insecticide, there's no Roundup Ready, no herbicides. And they have the most amazing plants. They have 350 varieties of potatoes, and it's all beautifully grown and harvested by hand. And it's a country that's developing tremendously. They're building a tremendous amount of construction, all with earth-based products. And so it's an example, really, for the United States. And what I'd like to see is more people going back to the land. Putin is giving away land in Russia, and he's encouraging the people to go out and start small farming plots, of like 10 acres and under.
I love Putin. I think he's doing some great stuff.
Yeah, and that's the future model. The idea where everybody lives in the city and we have corporate farming is, what a disaster. What an absolute disaster. And so anyway, getting back to cutting hemp, a sharp blade while it's still green is the way to do it. And so...
what do you think of that, Arik? Is that the main way they harvest it now, by hand?
No, in New Zealand they're using harvesters that are intended for wheat, but they don't work very well. The fibers jam them up.
They wouldn't work at all. Yeah, for wheat, and absolutely not. You need a different. Something that makes a single cut. And I can absolutely see why a combine would not work for him.
Yeah. But these problems are really artificial creations because the hemp industry has been suppressed. The machinery that would make it so much cheaper to produce is not available. So it's all about economies of scale.
Right.
And if there was 400 or 500 hemp farmers in New Zealand, then there'd be one of these proper harvesters being shared, at least one, probably multiples of them being shared between all these farmers. But right now, there's not a single one of the appropriate machines in New Zealand because the farmers are too small scale and there's too few of them to warrant having one in the country. But whereas the Chinese
I'm
have
sorry.
got fleets of these things. The Chinese
Uh-huh.
have got hundreds of these harvesters because they've got the most hemp production in the world. So their economies of scale are working for them. Everywhere else, the economies of scale are working against the hemp farmers.
Right. Okay, we're going to have to wrap up soon. So I want you guys to have an opportunity to get your wares out there. Now, James, I know you have a new DVD that you just put out. Maybe you could tell the audience about that.
Are you talking to me? My line dropped for a second.
Yeah, your new DVD about your trip to Peru, I think.
Oh, yeah. Let me just make this quick. It's on my webpage, jmccsci.com. I'm not pre-announcing. There's a pre-release sale going on right now on my webpage, but it's an amazing discovery that I made actually completely by accident. It was a complete surprise, but an amazing discovery that will literally change how we view ourselves as the human species. And I'm going to make the release announcement on my show December 31st, a week from tomorrow night, or next Thursday.
Where can they listen to you, James? I get that out there too.
Yeah, well, there again, go to my webpage, jmccsci.com, and scroll down to the center column, and all the different ways to listen to my show are there. So it's
and any web search of James McCanney, MC, capital CANNEY, will take you to these places too. Yeah, just put his name in any search box.
Yeah, well, you might get some other things there too. But Jeff, if you can remember 7 letters, jmccsci.com. And so let's turn it over to Arik to finish off here.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show again. It was a great pleasure talking to you guys. And people can keep up with the sequel and all of the premieres that are coming up all around the world of Druglawed 1 by going to our Facebook page, which you can find by going to www.druglawed.com and then just click the link to the Facebook page. And for you listeners in Canada, the Canadian premiere of Druglawed 1 will be on the 29th of January in Peterborough at the Reframe Film Festival. So go along to that to see Druglawed.
Wow, that's not too far from where I am.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I'm in Toronto. I'm sort of in Toronto and in Quebec at Tremblant a fair bit. So in the wintertime. So I might find a way to get up to that. That's not too far from Toronto. Well, it's about 2 hours from where I live when I'm in Toronto. Yeah.
You could ski there.
Well, Peterborough's a hockey town.
You could skate there.
Big hockey town. No, there's not much skiing in Ontario. That's right. You got to go to Quebec where the mountains are bigger. But hey, what about your movie? Get your Druglawed 1 movie promo out there, Arik. Explain how that works too, because I'm telling you, for $2, I mean, it's unbelievable. You're giving it away, man. But anyways, it's an amazing movie, folks. For $2, give it to someone for a Christmas present or something. Can people gift this thing?
Yes, you can. You can gift it to somebody else, and what will happen is they will get a link in their inbox, which they open, and it says there, download Druglawed, and they just click the link. It will take them to the VHX page where they can either watch the film in the VHX viewer or download their own copy. If you download your own, I recommend the 540p version, which is the higher definition one, and that can be played on any plasma screen. You can even use that to play it in a theater, in a cinema. A small cinema will be able to use that file to project it. So you can organize your own screening of Druglawed if you want to. You don't even have to tell me. I just want people to see the film. That's why we've made it so cheap.
Yeah, and like I say, it's top quality film, top quality sound. I was watching it earlier today. It's fantastic. It's just like something made in Hollywood. I just can't believe the quality of the stuff you put out, Arik. It's just all the kudos to you in the world. Okay, folks. So I just before we hit the commercial break here in a couple of minutes, I want to remind everyone we're going to I Am Nature Extended. I believe so. If you hear someone else's voice after the break, you know it didn't work again. But I have been reassured that this evening we will. It's going to work for the next 2 hours. We should have an open forum chat time. I'm not sure if Arik and James can stay, but there's other people who are waiting to come on. So send me a Skype, bporter, Porter 5611, and we'll hook up and we'll get you live on the radio. All right. So anything else? We got a minute here. Anybody want to say anything? Go for it.
Well, I'll just, I wanted to some praise to Arik and the whole effort that he's doing here. This is so important for one of the many things that we have to accomplish here coming up in the year 2016. Let's put a goal the end of 2016. Hemp is being used industrially, and all of these other uses are coming online and actually being used commercially, and the public is going to those rather than the traditional materials and the traditional, all the traditional things we've been using. Be conscious of hemp coming on the market and go to those products and support them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody who's as well